Good evening and welcome to the Locker Room European Special. This is night number 2 as we cover all the Scottish teams in Europe. Yesterday it was Rangers' turn, tomorrow it's Hearts' turn, but tonight it's all about the champion Celtic, who were in Germany to take on RB Leipzig. Disappointing 3-1 defeat for Celtic. And tonight I'm joined by two distinguished guests. It might be three later. Firstly, it's a man who joined us for Celtic Real Madrid game a couple of weeks ago from the Celtic by Numbers. It's Alan Morrison. Alan, thank you for coming back. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very, very well. Thanks, Graham. Thanks for having me back.
Not a problem. And our regular guest as well is Mr. David Smith. Dave, how are you, mate?
Yeah, very well. Apologies I could be on last night, guys, but I was up in Troyes. Fine game last night, but back on with the lads tonight.
Good stuff. And we might be joined a little later by Regan Stevens as well, so hopefully he'll be on soon. So, as I said, Celtic went down by 3-1 against Leipzig. Now, before we get into the actual game itself, I've got to say, Alan, I know you're a Celtic fan, but I actually thought that was a very good game of football. I quite enjoyed watching that.
Yeah, no, listen, it was always going to be... I'd say it was always going to be... It had the potential to be a great game because you had two teams that were going to want to press up high on the opposition and we're going to want to, force mistakes and turnovers. So you're going to have a lot of transitions. You're probably going to have a lot of potential for teams getting overloaded and overrun. And that's pretty much what happened the first sort of 25, 30 minutes. The other potential for a game like that is it can become a bit of a mess because, it's just constantly the ball's turning over. It's a bit like a sort of kids sort of Sunday league game kind of thing. But no, listen, it was a very entertaining game. But I think that, they had a lot of quality in the final third. And, obviously the way that we play, that we're not sort of parking the bus. It's not 9 men behind the ball. Their attacking players were often getting the ball in promising situations. And, we had a few lucky escapes with a couple of offsides, to be fair, before they actually, ran out 3-1 in the game. But yeah, I can imagine for a neutral, it would have been very entertaining. There was a lot of chances. I think there was 28 shots in total in the game. I think RB Leipzig's expected goals was over 2, and Celtic's was about 1. So yeah, a pretty entertaining game in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, as a neutral fan like myself as well, watching that game, it's just great to see two teams really going for it, and I thought both teams did that tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a cracking game, a cracking spectacle for European football. And when you look at RB Leipzig, they've recovered and are a far more superior outfit to what they were a couple of weeks ago when they played Shakhtar Donetsk. We made the point, Alan, especially on the show after the Real Madrid game, where RB Leipzig were on the verge of changing a new manager. It appeared that he didn't even see Friday morning because he was sacked on Thursday morning. So, and then they brought in Marco Rose. And also Rose, from anybody who doesn't know, he's obviously managed like Erling Haaland and he's managed Dortmund. And he's a top coach when it comes to European football. And you can see that they've improved drastically in a short space of time under Marco Rose. But let's be honest, I was speaking about this to yourself, Graham. When you look at the game, I mean, RB Leipzig took the lead and they could have been 2 up as well because they had the offside goal and some of the chances they had, there was either through good goalkeeper or good defending or just RB Leipzig being lacklustre for a goal. And then Celtic did tremendously well to bring it one apiece for Jota. Great goal. Hatate plays it to Kyogo cuts inside and bangs it to Jota, and Jota, thank you very much, with a fine fish in the far corner. I thought it was a great move and a great goal. It was total football. It wasn't as though it was a pass goal. It was pass, bang, goal. And that's what I liked about it the most. And you expect the Celtic to go kick off in there, but RB Leipzig had a renewed optimism as soon as Celtic scored again, and Celtic had a few VAR decisions go their way, but then when it didn't go their way, karma hit them because Celtic fans were celebrating when the goal to initially make it 2-1 didn't exactly go in. Celtic fans were celebrating, and 30 seconds later, Joe Hart's kicking the ball into the net again. And then icing on the cake with RB Leipzig and the third and game set match as far as RB Leipzig were concerned.
Now we are, as I did say, we're joined by Regan Stevenson. Regan, how are you getting on, my man?
I'm doing well. Sorry for being late, guys. I'm just seeing my laptop up, but no, I thought Celtic played well on Europe tonight, Graham. But it was just Leipzig were too good. That and Cuckoo up top, you can see why he's been linked to big clubs. Because I thought he played well tonight.
Regan looks like he's sat in his garage right now. Good view there, Regan.
No,
Alan-
I'm sat right in front of the telly watching the Kilmarnock versus St Johnstone game, Graham.
Oh, it's 2-0 to Kilmarnock, isn't it, so far?
Aye, 64 minutes gone now.
So, Alan, just looking at the game as it started, Christopher Nkunku has a shot after 2 minutes that he just puts wide. Did that set the tone, really, for how that game was going to finish?
Well, I think there's weaknesses in the way Celtic play in terms of the personnel that they've got. Which I do a podcast called The Huddle Breakdown. It's something that we talk about a lot. In that we've got a goalkeeper and many of the components of the back four who are being asked to play out from the back, which is not something that they're probably with the exception of Juranovic, who's a little bit more experienced international player. He's got a bit more speed as well, so he can get out of tricky situations if he's being pressed. But certainly, Taylor, Jens, Welsh, they're not, and Hart especially are not the best under pressure playing out of the back. And that chance came from a misplaced Jens pass, and that was a feature. And it was a thing actually that Postecoglou after the game was most really critical of his own players about, was that he felt they became too safe in their passing, which is a lovely insight into his philosophy, because essentially he's echoing the old sort of Bielsa piece around, it wasn't that we should have done something different, is that we didn't do what we're supposed to do well enough, and we should have done more of it. And that was the frustration. If you're going to play that way, you've got to pass out from the back, and you've got to be brave. And it's not just about doing it once or twice; it's about doing it for 90 minutes. And on the other hand, they were a team who, when they press you from the centre. They had four players pretty much in a block. Essentially, they're four attacking players that play very close to each other. So when they do get a transition, when there is a breakdown in play, they're physically close to each other, so they can attack you at speed. And you saw some of the quick interplay of passing that they were capable of when they got that. So, but as I say, what you have to do with Leipzig is you got to get at their defence, because my feeling in the first half was that essentially it was a game of transition. So whenever we lost the ball, it looked like they were going to score. But similarly, whenever they lost the ball, it looked like we were going to score. And that pretty much the story of the first half. They may have had slightly better chances, but actually at half time, the XG was about level and the chances were about level. So I was kind of okay at half time, because there was risk for both teams in the way that they were playing.
I'll get Regan's thoughts on this in a minute. I just want to ask you a question here, Alan. Now, I know you did something with the Celtic way, and it was a comment that I saw, and I think it was entitled, "Are Celtic fans too critical of Stephen Welsh?" Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a Hearts fan, so I obviously don't know this, but Stephen Welsh is only 22.
Yes.
Are some Celtic fans actually very critical of Stephen Welsh, even the fact he's very young? And to be fair, I actually thought he was okay tonight.
Yeah, he did well. He's actually a pretty good passer of the ball, and it's something part of his game that he's improving. The problem that Stephen's got is he's a little bit like Starfelt. He's not the tallest, right? He's barely 6 foot. And when you play in the Scottish League, as you know, virtually every team in Scotland has got a big hunking centre forward. And if you land the ball on their head, you could often get beaten in the air, and Welsh often gets beaten in the air. And that's one thing that people kind of pick up on. I think the problem that he had on Saturday against Motherwell was that Motherwell basically sat off the two centre backs and let them have the ball, and they man marked everybody really tightly. So the onus was on Welsh and Jens to find the players further forward, and they generally did a pretty good job. The problem that Welsh had on his side was that O'Reilly was pushed too far up, and whereas O'Reilly would normally fall into that half space in that sort of number 8, number 10. Sort of 10 yards in from the touchline between the midfield and the defence, that sort of half space position. That's where he traditionally picked the ball up last season, and he was always on the half turn, and he was then looking forward for the runs of the quick forwards. He's pushed right up now with Kyogo because I think they're trying to overload the defenders. But it means that he either had an out ball to Maeda wide, or he had to come back and find a ball. And I think people were getting frustrated with him because they didn't think he was passing quick enough. But actually, I don't think it was his fault. I think it was the way that the team was set up. And specifically, the way that O'Reilly was positioned relative to the passing lanes that Welsh wanted to pass into.
Regan, are you a fan of Stephen Welsh?
Well, I've been quite critical of Stephen Welsh, to be honest. I do like him. I just don't think he's up to Celtic standard, if I'm being honest. I think if you look at Starfelt and Carter Vickers, I think they're totally above Stephen Welsh's level, and I think it's been shown the last couple of games. Obviously, the game against Motherwell, I don't know if you're at the game, Alan, but a lot of the fans were very critical of him, being quite slow as well. But yeah, I mean, I think he's one that Celtic need to work on, because I don't think he's as great defensively as a Starfelt or a Carter Vickers. But like Alan said, he's only 22.
Donny Drummond says, did Rangers beat Leipzig last year? Yes, they did. They won 3-2 on aggregate. Dave, just to get your thoughts, after 10 minutes, Peter Gulashi, the Leipzig goalkeeper, goes off injured. It was a poor pass back from Timo Werner. He goes off injured and he's replaced by Janis Blazwicz. And later on after that, I think 24 minutes, Kyogo has a very good header saved by Maeda. Now, I think he does everything he could there, Kyogo, to score. That's a good save for the keeper, though.
Sorry, Graham, can I just elaborate on what the guys have been saying about Stephen Welsh? Because I was tempted to come in and say something there. Let's be honest, missing somebody like Carmen and Carter Vickers is huge for the way, first and foremost, the way Celtic play, and secondly, for the way Celtic are set up defensively and the way they play defensively. At the same time as well, Stephen Welsh, Champions League quality, I don't think he is. His quality in the aspect, he's got a lot of quality in Scottish football. His quality in the aspect, he's a good defender. His quality in the aspect that he's got a credibility about him. He's got an organisation about him. He's got a discipline about him. But he's not ready for Champions League football yet. But I don't know if you guys are on it or Riga, if you agree.
Yeah, I just think in general, he's a good defender for the Scottish League, like Dave says, but I don't think he's ready for that step up for me.
Yeah, I think he's a young player, obviously, and the central defence is a difficult position to play. I mean, having said that, they've got they had Gvardiol at the other end, who's I think only 22 himself, an outstanding young player. But Welsh is nowhere near that level. He's actually from I use a lot of data, do performance analysis, and him and Starfelt are not that much different. They profile very similarly, actually. It's just that Starfelt's a little bit more experienced, I think, and a little bit more streetwise in some of his defending than maybe Welsh is. But listen, Celtic knocked back a significant bid from an Italian team for Welsh in the summer because the manager believes in him. The manager thinks there's a player there. So if Postecoglou thinks he can get a player out of him, then that's good enough for me.
Alan, I'm going to give you a right good. Sorry, Graham. I'm going to give you a right good start here, Alan. Sorry, 26 defeats out of 32 away games for Celtic in the Champions League.
Yeah, listen, and imagine if you look at all Scottish teams in the Champions League, the record's probably similar. It's just very tough, I think, for clubs in our country to step up to that level. Absolutely, no doubt about it. I mean, that was a really good side. I was looking through some of their players. The Leipzig model, the Red Bull model, if you like, which is on a smaller scale at Salzburg and then at a bigger scale at Leipzig, is one where they look to buy in some of the best teenagers or 18, 19, 20-year-old players in European football, and then develop them, either loan them out, develop them, sell some. Usually, they get 2 or 3 years out of them before they go for big money. Gvardiol would be an example, and Nkunku would be another one. The boy that played the right back, Simakan, who looked like a basketball player to me. I mean, his legs were longer than Greg Taylor, right? What an athlete! They signed him from French football. The Hungarian lad, Szoboszlai, was another one. Those players were all signed for over 10, 15, 20 million euros as teenagers, right? So, whereas Celtic can easily outspend any club in Scotland, but 6 million is a lot of money, and 6 million for Jota, 6 million for Carter Vickers is clearly massive for Scottish football. But you're then playing against a team that's paying 20 million for some of the best teenagers in Europe, and actually their scouting network is so good, it's very data driven. That players like Gvardiol and Kunku, there's not many misses there. These are top players, and they're going to go on and play for big teams, and they're going to make a lot of money out of them as well. So listen, it's a tough environment, and no doubt about it. So that record doesn't surprise me. Absolutely.
I just wanted to ask you, Alan, right? Because for me, surely with the Scottish, the coefficient looking good, surely that can be the model for Celtic in the coming years. Because if you're getting 40 million quid in the bank for winning the title, then if the coefficient keeps improving, then hopefully Celtic can spend a bit more money and break that £6 million transfer record.
So I hear what you're saying, but I mean, 40 million is a one-off, and the transfer fees are one-off, but wages are forever. So the more money you pay for players, right, the higher the transfer fee, the more the wages. And the wages tend to be for 4 or 5 years, and you've got to factor that in. So, Celtic can't do what other clubs have done, mentioning no names, and gamble on getting into the Champions League every year, and then, falling badly when we don't. Celtic's. I've had this debate with Duco James on the Huddle Breakdown. He was saying exactly the same as you, Reagan, that Celtic should be looking at this sort of teenage market and getting in early at a sort of that sort of price point. I don't think we could compete, because we can't compete with a Leipzig that can pay 15 million for a 19-year-old. The market that we seem to be getting into, which I think is a really good one, is looking at players that are in their early 20s, maybe 22, 23, who have maybe already been at a big club, and for whatever reason it hasn't worked out, because big clubs tend to hoover up younger players, younger and younger. And then it hasn't worked out, and then we kind of get them as right, here's your second chance almost. So, Jota, Carter Vickers was at Tottenham, Jota was at Benfica, the lad that we got from Haksabanovic, he was snapped up by West Ham as a teenager. And then, it's a sausage factory. These clubs, they'll buy 5 teenagers, and they won't mind spending 5-6 million on them, and then they'll spit them out, the ones they don't want, and they'll make a fortune from the ones that the one that makes it. Celtic can't afford to do that. We can't afford to spend 5 million on a player and it not work out. So we have to come up with a smarter model.
Yeah, I mean to ask you another question then. See, in terms of like the last couple of years, like Jack Henry, or like Luke O'Connell, like Dembele. Like if you look at Dembele, for example, Celtic thought they were getting an absolutely world-class young player, but they never gave a chance ever. Under Neil Lennon, under Brendan Rodgers, they never got that proper chance.
Is this Karamoko?
Yes.
He was only a kid though. I mean, the worst thing that Ronnie Deila ever did was he played him in the reserves when he was 15. I think it was against Hearts actually, and it got so much publicity that the kid almost never had a chance from that moment on. Ultimately he didn't make it. As a 19-year-old, he couldn't break into the team, and that's just the way it goes, unfortunately.
So just looking at the game, Christopher Nkunku has a goal disallowed after 17 minutes. It was very tight, but I think maybe he was just offside. And then after 24 minutes becomes an absolutely crazy spell where Dave Kyogo has a header saved from a made cross. Then Greg Taylor has a shot saved straight at the keeper, but it's a decent attempt. Kyogo has a shot deflected. And then seconds later, Christopher Nkunku breaks clear. It's a very good finish, and Celtic are to go down. But that was an absolutely mad spell, Dave, where Celtic looked like they're going to take the lead in one of those spells.
Yeah, apologies, Graham, because we've actually still got fun there for the last 5 minutes. You've been the isolated one sitting in your living room going, I've got to listen to this.
That's all right.
No, you're absolutely right. That's fine margins of football, Graham. You'll acknowledge that, and that's the thing. And that's the fine differences, the fine margins. When you're on top, you've got to make chances count. You've got to make your impetus in the game count. You've got to make sure whenever you're getting these golden opportunities, because European football is a totally different dynamic to Scottish football, where if you get a chance, it's like you're the David and Goliath situation sometimes in European football, where you're getting these chances and you need to be taking them away, and you need to be scoring them. Whilst if we were to turn the footboard here, you'd be saying that exactly with Scottish football, where you're looking at your Commanders, your Johnson, Sturgeon, and so forth. So that's where we're at, and the fact that Celtic don't defend the corresponding attack from Leipzig means that it's an uphill task from that point onwards for Celtic. I made the point to you earlier on tonight, Graham, that obviously RB Leipzig did that disallowed goal in the just before half time. I think we've been carted long before then how that goal stood. Thankfully, from a persuasion, the VAR actually hardly worked for them tonight. But yeah, the fact that Joe Hart can show a bit of karma and just pass the ball to an RB Leipzig player is amateurish, and at the same time, it's a hand-in-head moment at the same time as well. So it's one of those that it's a frustrating night for Celtic. It's a disappointing evening for Celtic, and it's one that they need to learn from. For me, I'd be resting players, not the whole team. I mean, I would be resting players for St Johnstone Saturday, with the aspect of the fact you've got RB Leipzig and East End Glasgow on Tuesday next week. We can get the 12th man, you can get a good performance, you can get a good result, hopefully, and then that sets you up beautifully for going to the Bernabeu and going to Poland to play Shakhtar Donetsk. So, no, in fact, the East End Glasgow, isn't it? Sorry. So, yeah, I think in regards to that, RB Leipzig's massive in terms of how Celtic's next 3 games in the Champions League is going to look, and seeing where they're going to be after Christmas with regards to either Champions League, Europa League, Europa League, or out altogether.
Alan, just looking at the chances that Celtic had before Leipzig got that goal, I might be being a little bit harsher, but do you think it falls to the wrong player where it goes to Greg Taylor because he shoots straight at the keeper? Do you think if that's somebody else, i.e. a Kyogo or maybe a Matt O'Reilly, that might be 1-0 to Celtic?
Yeah, I mean, he hit the target. The keeper made a hash of it. I'd be more looking at, why weren't we on top of the rebound, really? But that minute encapsulates Champions League football. You had the Kyogo header. You had three efforts at goal in that preceding passage of play. We don't score, and then from our own corner, they break away and score. And that's a situation there's no team in Scotland would be capable of scoring the goal that they scored in that way. The speed at which they broke. I mean, from the minute that McGregor mistimed the ball, they were already on the front foot. And when the RB Leipzig player first makes contact with the ball, I think there's something like 6 Celtic players behind the ball, and there's 6 RB Leipzig players already breaking forward because they anticipate that this is what's going to happen. And they were just lethal in Nkunku. The pass through, the timing of the run, and then the finish were exceptional. And you just don't see that quality in Scotland at all, unfortunately. And so that was it. You don't take your chances at one end. You make the smallest of mistakes 80 yards from your own goal, and then you get punished with a goal at the other end of great quality. And that unfortunately is what you're going to come up against every game, pretty much. Because even thinking back to the Shakhtar game, and I do maintain that Celtic are a stronger side than Shakhtar, but one mistake in midfield, and again it was actually McGregor, and Mudryk scores. You just don't get away with it. You don't get away with it in that level.
Yeah, I mean, Reagan, how frustrated would you be if you possibly that you've lost a goal from your own attack?
Yeah, I think you'd be absolutely raging, because I know he says it's the way he plays football, but I think when you've trained all week and you've worked hard for it, then he would be raging that it's small margins. But I suppose, like Alan said, it's small margins when you go to Champions League. It's totally different when you play Motherwell at home or you play Aberdeen at home. It's not the same type of game. No disrespect to them. But well, I just wanted to go on to a point that Dave made there about Celtic possibly resting players for Saturday's game. David, I don't see that at all happening, because if you look at it, Celtic's last away game, they dropped points, and the gap is only 2 points, and I just don't see them resting.
Yeah, but what's the bread and butter? Is the bread and butter the league, or is the bread and butter try to get as far as you can in European football beyond Christmas?
The bread and butter for Ange is to win the league title. The Champions League is the Champions League is a bonus. Champions League is a bonus because the way the coefficient's working out, Graham, and everybody, it's £40 million again for next season. So Celtic will be looking to buy that money.
Yeah, I mean, Alan, after 36 minutes, obviously McGregor was hurt in the challenge that basically led to the goal. And then he has to go off. I mean, how big a blow was that to lose McGregor?
I was listening to Chris Sutton in commentary, and he was adamant that this was a massive blow for Celtic and that it made a huge difference. I completely disagree with that. I don't think it made any difference at all. And the reason for that is because Celtic's midfield was so open that McGregor wasn't really covering when in transition, when Leipzig were attacking, they left the two centre backs. They pretty much left the two holding midfielders, and then the other six forwards attacked. Other six players attacked. The two fullbacks both bombed on, and then they had the box of four attackers who didn't really wander wide much. They stayed pretty much within the width of the penalty area. So they had six players, and we were trying to hit them on the break. They were trying to hit us on the break. And whenever the play broke down, there was just this massive gap in the middle of the pitch. And whereas they had two players holding, we didn't have any because we tended to have McGregor, and then you've got Hatate who'll pull one side, O'Reilly will pull the other, or sort of push up. So you didn't even have that safety blanket of having those two covering midfielders. So it made absolutely no difference to the game because we were wide open in that part of the field anyway, even when McGregor was on the field. And actually, Abelgard, again, I disagree with Chris Sutton. He was saying, the lad hasn't actually played since May, I don't think, and he came on for like a minute the weekend there at the end. But I actually think he made a number of interceptions and last-ditch challenges and tackles. I know he looked a bit rusty at times, and a couple of his passes were off, but he actually did plug quite a few gaps in that second half when it looked like we could have got overrun. So nothing against McGregor. I'd be very concerned about him not being available in the Scottish League, because what we saw when he didn't play against St Mirren was that the speed of the passing, the speed of the build-up was just reduced so much that we just St Mirren were never moved from their quite rigid and defensive shape, and that is so. I'd be more concerned about him being missing for league games. Although listen, he's played bloody how many minutes the last 3 years? It's no surprise that he's succumbed to injury finally.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Sorry, Graham. I was going to ask you that, Alan, right? Because McGregor's obviously not playing on Sunday. So who would you play on Sunday in the midfield? Because
Sorry, go on, Regan.
Because obviously you've got Moy who's injured as well. You've got Abelgard that's just back from injury. You've got McCarthy who was on for the last for 5 minutes of the game. So who would you pick for Saturday's game?
Yeah, I think you made a good point. It was interesting what you were saying, Reagan, about should Celtic make changes and should Postecoglou was trying to build a squad of 25, 26 players so that you can play European football, play Scottish football, and kind of rotate and keep everybody fresh. I don't think we're anywhere near that yet. And on top of that, like you say, McGregor's out. Moy was injured tonight. Turnbull was injured tonight because he wasn't even on the bench. It looks like McGregor's injured tonight. So there's your four first choice central midfielders kind of all out. So I don't know that we can rotate because it doesn't sound like Carter Vickers. Starfield definitely won't be fit. So we're going to be Jens and Welsh are going to have to go again. The central midfield is going to be a case of who's standing. And I know this is Rich whinging about injuries from a Celtic fan, but just in terms of the context of preparing for next Tuesday, how do we kind of keep the squad fresh and prepared? And I think it's going to be really difficult, frankly, to do that by the sounds of it. But as I said, I'm more concerned about losing McGregor for domestic games, actually, because I agree with you. We've got to win the league this year. We have to, because it's direct entry into the Champions League again. For me, this year is about building, about experience, about trying to push the limits of the learning for the players. And we've seen what a tough school this is and how many knocks they're getting in the Champions League. And they're not going to make a massive mark in it this season. And as I said to you the last time I was on, for me, if we're still in Europe at all after Christmas, then to me that's always a successful season, because 20 odd years I'm that old. When we're never in Europe past Christmas. So for me that's the priority. But in terms of what team we put out on Saturday, I'm not sure.
Dave, I want to get your thoughts on something that Alan has mentioned there. Now, I agree with him. Now, I listened to the radio when I came on the show, before I came on the show tonight, and they were touching on Oliver Abelsgaard, and some of them said that he looked out his depth tonight. Now, like Alan, I actually thought he did well tonight. He's only making his second appearance. He's been thrown on a Champions League game, and I thought to come on for Callum McGregor in such a massive game, I thought Abelsgaard did really well tonight.
Well, because I'm sandwiched in between your both of your opinions, I'll try and be vigilant in this regard by saying that Abelsgaard is the type of player that it's probably too much of an occasion for him. I mean, we don't know the player inside out. There's an post Collingwood, just to give you an example, that Abelsgaard, it looked as though the occasion got to him. I mean, Abelsgaard is a good player, and he showed in stages this evening about some of the touches he made, about how he can get forward and all that kind of stuff. But there is parts of his game he can improve on as well, and I'm pretty sure you guys could acknowledge that. But it'll be a lot of comfort. I mean, tonight was one of those performances that you can look at and say improvement needed. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great, it was bang in the middle.
Alan, were you maybe a little surprised that he brought Abelsgaard on? He's obviously got James McCarthy there, he's got Haksabanovic there. Are you surprised that it was Abelsgaard that he turned to for McGregor?
No, not at all, because it's providing that he's match fit, and I think we saw that he's not played since May. He's had the hiatus of obviously being attached to a Russian club and then having to find somewhere to train. I can't remember which club he was training at, so he's not had the best preparation. He's not had a full pre-season, so I think you've got to give him some latitude there. I mean, he's not a young kid, right? Abelsgaard, he's 26 years old. He's played in Russia. He's got a Danish cap. He's not a rookie, okay? He's a reasonably experienced individual, so I wouldn't have any concerns about him. He's very highly rated. I've got quite high hopes for him once he settles in. I'm not surprised he came on, because we didn't have Moy, we didn't have Turnbull, and McCarthy's not a Postecoglou signing. To be brutally honest about it, and so McCarthy really was making up the numbers tonight because there literally was nobody else. It was either that or it was young Scott Robertson. Young Scott Robertson was on the bench, one of the kids, and that he'd have been the other alternative. So no, I wasn't surprised, but I thought it was a really tough shift for him, because, as I say, not only has he played literally 1 minute for Celtic, and has he not played a full game since for 5-6 months. He was pitched into a position where he was literally the only covering player, and he often had 6 Leipzig attackers running at him. It must have been absolutely terrifying. So I think he did pretty well, considering.
Regan, 48 minutes on the clock. A wonderful little pass from Hatate puts Kyogo through. Kyogo looks up, sees Jota. Jota finishes 1-1. At that point, are you thinking Celtic could win this?
Yeah, I thought Kyogo missed a few chances in the first half. I thought Jota was good tonight, and I thought, right, well, Celtic's got a chance here. But like you guys were saying earlier on, I don't know if they play too much football. Maybe that's too harsh, but I was just disappointed when obviously that goal with VAR got disallowed from the RB Leipzig, and then about 15 seconds later, Joe Hart takes the ball and then 2-1. 1 minute you were celebrating, the next minute you were not happy. But yeah, it was a strange one.
Yeah, I mean, 57 minutes gone. Szoboszlai has an effort off the post, a great 1-2 where Werner, very good move actually, and then this is just mental. So Szoboszlai has a strike ruled out for offside. They go to the VAR and they say that the boy is basically kneeling down in front of Joe Hart, and Joe Hart can't see it. So then turns this bit where Alan, it turns to the crowd, the Celtic fans are celebrating, delighted that the goal's been disallowed. And then, as Reagan says, 15 seconds later, Joe Hart plays a ridiculous ball out for the back. It's gobbled up by Salas Light, who plays it into, I think it is, what was the guy's name?
Silva, Andy Silva, yeah.
Yeah, Silva, and he scores. It was crazy from Joe Hart.
Yeah, listen, Joe Hart was dropped by Pep Guardiola pretty much within, I think, 6 months, if not less, of him becoming Man City manager, because he wasn't. I remember at the time, certainly the English media would tell you that Joe Hart was possibly the best goalkeeper in the world, would do in their view, because he wasn't a style of goalkeeper that Guardiola wanted in terms of playing out from the back, and this was something that all of us looked at each other thinking, what's he on about, But actually, logically, it kind of makes sense, because if you're a possession dominant team like a Manchester City in England are and Celtic in Scotland are, the opposition only get maybe 5 or 6 shots, less than 10 certainly shots in a game, and maybe only 2 or 3 of them are on target. So if you've got a competent shot stopper, right, can you deal with 2 or 3 shots? Versus if you're a team that's going to play out from the back, your goalkeeper is going to have possession of the ball about 30, 40 times in the game. So you're saying, can you build the play 30, 40 times accurately versus making 2 or 3 saves, right? And that's the equation. That's the thing you have to balance in your mind. Now Joe Hart's come into Celtic, and none of us believe he's the sort of goalkeeper that is perfect for the system of football that Postecoglou wants to play. But on the other hand, he brings an enormous presence, calm, professionalism, attitude, all of those sort of non-performance things, if you like, but things which help in terms of forming a group, or forming a good dressing room, forming a good training environment, forming a good culture. All of those things he adds enormously to. But he's never going to be a goalkeeper that is going to be, like an Alisson, Becker, or an Edison, probably extreme examples, who can ping a ball 50 yards to the halfway line onto somebody's chest, or etc. Now he's done his best, right? He actually has adapted his game, and he's adapted to it far better than, for example, Craig Gordon. Craig Gordon was brilliant for Celtic, but he was a bit sulky about trying to learn to play out from the back under Brendan Rodgers, and you could see he was kind of doing it under a bit of duress. And it always amuses me when I see him play for Hearts, and he just bangs the ball up the pitch, and I can see he's almost like going, "Ha ha!" I mean, none of this playing out from the back nonsense. He loves it. Great goalkeeper, Craig Gordon, absolutely amazing. But so that's the dilemma, and that is the risk that we've always had. Now that risk has not manifested itself in Scotland, as far as I can remember. There've been a few hairy moments. Because he's not the most agile, Joe Hart. He's 35, he's 6'5", he's a big guy. He's not the quickest on his feet. We've had a few scares, but that was the first real, absolute horror show that we've had from him in his time there. So, and he was big enough to sort of take it on the chin after the game. I'm kind of, my honest opinion on Hart is based on the data. If you took away all the non-performance stuff that I've just mentioned about, he's an amazing character, he's a great guy, and all that sort of stuff. He broadly makes the saves you expect him to make. He doesn't really make any saves that are, exceptional, like maybe Craig Gordon still does even now. And he's pretty average with the ball at his feet. So I still think we should have gone out in the summer and bought a footballing goalkeeper. And instead, we bought Siegrist, who's actually very similar to Joe Hart. So that doesn't make any sense to me, and I think it's still an area that is very much an area that Celtic will need to, in the longer term, try and improve.
Just wanted to ask you then, Alan, do you think you'll maybe throw Siegrist in? Because if you look at the last 2 goals that Celtic have conceded, the Leipzig goal tonight and then the one at the weekend, I see a lot of Celtic fans on social media saying that maybe they should drop Joe Hart. Do you think he maybe will drop Joe Hart soon rather than later, or do you think he'll stick with him?
I think he'll stick with him personally. The thing with Postecoglou, which is fascinating, is that when he's looking at players, it's character and personality first, and then it's ability second. So you don't get to look at. He doesn't get to think about how good you are as a footballer if you don't pass that first test. So the first test is, what are you like as a man, what are you like as a human being, how are you going to fit into the culture of what we're trying to do, how are you going to be a good teammate, and then it's, if you pass that test, it's, are you good enough to play for us, sort of thing. I don't personally think he will. My reading of Postecoglou after the game was that his frustration wasn't at heart, it was at his defenders for not being brave enough on the ball and not trying to get the ball forward, and they kept going back to him and putting him under pressure when the manager was looking for the defenders to be braver with their forward passing. And that also includes the midfielders, could they get themselves open? But sometimes you have to, especially at this level, and we did do it sometimes, but we didn't do it a lot of times, is you've got to pass to a player who's actually under pressure and being marked. And you've got to then be good enough to shield the ball, protect it, recycle it, and then provide the next pass. Otherwise you'll never get out. You'll never get out at that level if you don't do that. And I think that was his frustration, not the goalkeeping error. Because I would say Postecoglou would just say, well, I asked him to do, that's the way I want him to play, and these things are going to happen. I think that would be his attitude.
I'll just give you the full-time score from Rugby Park tonight. It finished in the Premiership. Kilmarnock 2, St Johnstone 1. A double from Daniel Armstrong gave Kilmarnock a 2-0 lead, but Theo Bair scored in the last minute for St Johnstone, but Kilmarnock held on for a 2-1 victory. So Kilmarnock hitting form just before they play Hearts on Sunday. Cheers for that, Kelly. Know what's going to happen now, don't you? So just going back to Celtic tonight, Dave, would it be fair to say that second goal really kind of knocked the stuffing out of Celtic? Because at that point, at 1-1, they're well in the game, and then they lose such a poor goal. Did that knock Celtic a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, when RB Leipzig scored the second goal, I was watching the game, and you had that feeling it could possibly still be a case of getting someone out of the game. But then RB Leipzig kept on having large passages of the ball. They kept on being passive. They kept on being in the front foot. And then once the third goal comes in, it's a case of 10 minutes of Celtic trying to force their way back at the game, and 10 minutes of RB Leipzig playing a simple training game, basically. So as soon as that second goal went in, it was the credentials and the springboard for RB Leipzig to go and kick on and get seal all 3 points in this one. So in terms of the second goal, it's fine margins again. It came at the worst possible time as far as Celtic were concerned, and RB Leipzig obviously wanted to win the game as a result of that.
Reagan, the third goal, I have to say, it's a fantastic goal. I mean, Christopher Nkunku, really fantastic ball, and what an absolutely brilliant play from Tsimikas. As Alan touched on earlier, like a basketball player, it was a beautiful little ball in, and it's a great finish from, I think it's Silva again for his second goal of the night. It's a fantastic goal.
Yeah, I mean, what a player he is, and I think it just shows you that at Champions League level they can just switch it on like in 2 seconds and kill you. Celtic think they're in the game. We might have a chance of getting a draw here, and then 2 seconds later they go straight up the park and score that defining goal to put the game to bed. But I think in terms of Ange, I mean, it's like Alan said, I think it's a learning curve this year in the Champions League, and then next year they can build on it and try and do well in this group stage.
Alan, I might be a little bit harsh here, and I'm not meaning to be, but if you watch that third goal, it is a fantastic ball from Nkunku. But does Jota need to do more to track the run from Tsimikas?
So again, this comes back to risk and reward, right? About the system that Celtic play. So what happened is you've got Taylor's drifted infield because he's anticipating the ball. He's trying to apply pressure to that part of the field, because that's where Leipzig got the ball, and that leaves Tsimikas. I mean, incredible athlete, 6'2", as I say, legs like a giraffe, big muscly fellow as well, and a good footballer, really good footballer. And he's only 21, 22, I think. He saw the space and he absolutely went for it. And at the halfway line, Jota is level with Tsimikas, and then Tsimikas gets about 7 yards on him. So yeah, Jota's kind of switched off there, and he's let his man run. Whether then he expects the 50-yard ping to be perfection, and then for Tsimikas to cushion it off of his instep to perfection into into the path of Silva, you should expect that, but that's what happened. So yeah, Taylor and Jota, their communication, Jota should have seen the danger and the space that Taylor inverting, which he often does, had caused. And listen, again, at 50 minutes when it's 1-1, we're in a similar position to the Real Madrid game where you can see that they're a good side, but Celtic have given everything and have pretty much matched them, and on all the stats are pretty level at that point. But we tail off, physically we tail off. We can't maintain that against such a good side. We're used to having 70% of the ball, Celtic, in domestic games. We can impress Motherwell or any of the domestic teams. We can impress them really aggressively because we're only without the ball 30% of the time. But when I think the possession stats were 55, 45. So when it's 55% of the time, you've not got the ball and you're pressing and you're having to make a lot of recovery runs, because every time they beat the press, we were having to hair back, and these are fast, athletic players. It's a lot of running. It's tiring. We're not. Celtic players just not used to it. So there's a lot of learning to be had here, not just for the players, but for the manager in terms of how well his philosophy and his style scales to playing that quality of opposition. Because I don't think you can leave quite as many gaps as Celtic do, and I don't think you can play with the intensity that Celtic do in the SPFL to great effect when you've only got 45% of the ball. Players just don't have the reserves of energy to do that. So I think it's a lot of learnings, really. And listen, it's a young team, and B, it's the first that most of those players, their first experience of this level. So, and these are two good sides we've played, Madrid and Leipzig. I mean, Leipzig have improved enormously under Jose, the new manager, and we saw that, I think, tonight.
Okay, Regan, I'm going to come to you for this one. Now, obviously, Celtic made a number of substitutions later on in the game. They didn't really have that much of an effect, but it was difficult for them. But I'm going to get your thoughts on one of your favourite players, because you put it in the group chat, Daisen Maeda. What did you make of Maeda tonight?
I think Maeda's a difficult one because he offers a lot of running power, a lot of speed. He's probably good for Alan on his statistics of the amount of cover that he possesses in the game, but I just don't know what he offers in front of goal. I think he should offer more. He should offer more in terms of, I feel like there's too much emphasis on Kyogo all the time. I feel like Maeda should be chipping in a few goals at Alan. I just think sometimes if you look at Maeda, like everybody thinks like Maeda is a striker. Well, I think it's about time Maeda shows that he's got that the instinct of a striker to score a few goals, because I'm just a little bit worried that with Giakoumakis being injured and with Kyogo scoring but not that often at the moment, then I just want Maeda to be able to chip in more.
So I mean, yeah, but I think there's no doubt that he's not currently in great form. We saw glimpses last season where his sheer, like you say, sheer work rate. I mean, this is his main attribute really. His sheer work rate, his ability to press and harass the opposition, and then he was actually the top scorer in the J League with 24, playing as a striker. I don't think it was the last season before, maybe, before he moved to Celtic, certainly. So he has, and he is a good finisher. He's good in the air as well. Actually, to say he's not that tall, and he can finish off both feet. We saw a little bit of that last season. He got 5 or 6 goals. He's actually provided quite a few this season. But my concern with him is, he just his technical ability in terms of, his control wasn't great. He tried to take players on, and what he found was that actually at this level, his pace isn't exceptional, right? So he knocked the ball past the left-sided fullback Raum, who's a German international, and he couldn't get past him for pace because Raum was, again, big, strong, athletic guy and fast as well, because every single one of their players is at least 6 foot and athletic. That's the way. That's what they scout for. That's what they recruit for. So I think we felt at the beginning of the season that he would be vital in Europe because he would actually be that first defensive line with Kyogo, and that he would harass the opposition, and we could get some joy from turnovers. It's not worked out that way. In Europe, the way we seem to play is we push O'Reilly up with Kyogo, and Maeda drops down to the right or the left hand side. I personally would rather see them swap because I don't think O'Reilly's as effective being pushed that far forward, and I don't think therefore we get the best out of both players in that regard. But I can't deny that he's not in good form, Maeda, and I'm pretty sure that if Abada hadn't been observing Yom Kippur and therefore unavailable, that he would have actually played tonight.
I'll get Alan and Reagan's thoughts in this in a few minutes. So we've got 10 minutes to go, and disappointing night for Celtic. But I'm just trying to keep an eye on the other game in the group tonight. It's 92 minutes on the clock. It's Real Madrid 2, Shakhtar Donetsk 1 at the moment.
I'm actually watching this game. It's just about to take over to full time. I'll let you know as soon as it goes there. But yeah. Real Madrid have got a corner at the moment, so I don't think.
Dave, just looking at this group at the moment, assuming that Real Madrid win after 3 games, Madrid will be on 9 points, Shakhtar on 4, Leipzig on 3, and Celtic on 1. Obviously, still 3 games to go. Celtic, as I said to Alan before we came on the show tonight, Celtic are not out this group yet.
No, but you get the feeling that the Leipzig and Shakhtar games at the East End of Glasgow. Regan, was you saying something there?
Yeah, that's full time, 2-1.
Fantastic. Yeah, you get the feeling that the Shakhtar Leipzig games at the East End of Glasgow at Parkhead are going to be massive. Not just to see if Celtic could be in the Champions League, also to see if they're still going to be in European football beyond Christmas. Now, the primary objective for Celtic is making sure they're still in European football beyond Christmas for co-efficiency, for Scottish football credibility, for respect towards the Scottish game, for being proud towards the Scottish game, for all those reasons. I'll be saying exactly the same thing had it been other side of Glasgow as well. But obviously, Celtic haven't had the best start to this Champions League campaign. Any form of European football beyond Christmas will be a good sign. But I think from this point of view, and the fact that Celtic still have 3 games to go, it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves. I mean, I'd say it's must not lose against Leipzig, but a must not lose mentality is very dangerous. So it's a must-win game against Leipzig next week at Parkhead. There's no question about that. And then that brings you on to Real Madrid and Shakhtar. Real Madrid's going to be a tricky one. But Shakhtar at the East End of Glasgow with a full house can't be a tough man. And it's going to be just to see how the next couple of weeks go for Celtic.
Alan, Ange Postecoglou never looks too far ahead. He's obviously got the game on Saturday, but then he's got the game next Tuesday. Celtic will got 2 Champions League home games to come up. I mean, just how massive is this game against Leipzig next week that Celtic can overturn this game tonight and get 3 points on the board next week? How huge is that going to be?
Yeah, listen, it's still to play for in that regard. 2 home wins certainly completely changes the group in again, and puts it back into our favour because would you expect Leipzig to get anything off Real Madrid? I think that would be surprising if they did. So you could easily see not easily, but you could potentially see a situation where actually if that plays out. And Leipzig lose to us and then lose to Madrid, where it's actually a dead rubber against the Madrid game is a dead rubber now. So that is actually a tantalising prospect. Win those 2 games, Madrid beat Leipzig, and actually we're already Leipzig can't catch us. So that's all there. I am concerned again about the injuries are really piling up now, and again, no excuses in Scottish football. Celtic should be able to put a competitive team on the park against St Johnstone, no doubt. But against Leipzig, if we don't have Starfelt and Carter Vickers and McGregor and Turnbull and Moy and so on, that starts to become quite tough. But let's see how that plays out. But no, it is all to play for. But as I said before, I'm with Dave in that if we do get some form of European football after Christmas, I'll be really happy. It'd be great if we got through to the last 16, but I think looking at the quality that Leipzig had in the attacking third tonight, I think that's going to be a really, really tough ask. But as long as if we can beat Shakhtar and get through, I'll still be pretty happy.
Regan, you and Alan will know this more than anybody as Celtic fans. That atmosphere at Celtic Park next week is going to be absolutely incredible. Could they maybe play a part in helping Celtic win that game next week?
Yeah, they definitely could. And I'll not remember this game. The last time that RB Leipzig were at Celtic Park, Elton Edwards scored the winner to Celtic 1-2-1.
Dave, this season in the Champions League, I know games last 90 minutes, but there were spells in the Real Madrid game that Celtic played well. The Donetsk game, I thought Celtic were very good. And even tonight, they had their chances. So I think there are quite a lot of positives that Postecoglou can take from all 3 games so far in this Champions League.
Yeah, but it's about blending them into one. It's not about collective, this is what we did well, this is what we did well, this is what we did well. A lot of products will come from that, from a Celtic point of view. Products is a good thing. Ultimately, Celtic managers in particular are judged on 2 things. Domestic results, in terms of getting silverware, in terms of winning the Scottish Cup, Premiership, League Cup, so forth. They're also judged in Champions League results, though. Brendan Rodgers springs to mind heavily in this one because Brendan Rodgers did very, very well domestically at Celtic. Champions League, different kettle of fish altogether, just in terms of the success rate in that. You could also argue that other Celtic managers in the past have flattered and deceived at Champions League level. So it's going to be an interesting one. And I think Lars Postecoglou needs to take the positives that he's blended from the 3 games and turn it into a collective. Collective in the aspect of putting all the strong positives and try and mold out results. Try and get some results. Try and save European football beyond Christmas.
Alan, Celtic have a very important game coming up against St Johnstone at the weekend. They got the early kick-off, 12:30. Now, you would expect Celtic to win this game and probably comfortably, but would you just be happy? Forget the performance. Would you just be happy if Celtic won this game? That's all that matters, really.
I know what you're saying, but for me, it's performance first because that's the best predictor of future results, and you're more likely to get results if you perform well, right? And because you can perform well and lose, you can perform badly and win. Performing badly and win doesn't tell you a lot about how you're going to win the next game. If you perform well and win, that gives you a lot of lessons as to how you can then approach the next game. So long-winded answer, but I'm always looking for a good performance. If performances start to slip, then I am getting concerned. And performances haven't been great actually. I'll be honest with you. Performances, 50 minutes against Real Madrid. I actually thought we played very well in Warsaw. We just didn't finish our chances. It was an appalling performance against St Mirren, frankly, and it was a kind of patchy performance against Motherwell. And then tonight was good. Again, it was patchy. It was good bits and there was poor bits. So I think there's a lot of food for thought there for the manager in terms of, what team is going to get the show back on the road in terms of that consistency. Because the one thing that Celtic achieved under Postecoglou in Scotland was an incredible consistency of performance. He was overpowering every single team. Doesn't matter whether you played on plastic at Kilmarnock or Livingston, or whether it was in the rain at Ross County, or whether it was at home. There was a consistency there, and we need to get back to that quickly.
Regan, just last question to you. Do you think that Celtic can get out of this Champions League group, or is it probably going to be more likely to be Europa League?
Probably more likely to be in the second competition, Graham, but I definitely wouldn't rule it out, especially if they can get the 2 wins at Celtic Park.
Alan, you've kind of answered it already, but I'll ask you anyway. Do you think that Celtic will be playing Champions League football, or is it going to be Europa League?
I mean, in my heart, I think that Leipzig are a better team. I'll be honest with you, but football's not like that, right? And actually, Leipzig are under incredible pressure next week at Celtic Park because if Celtic win that game and then win at home to Shakhtar, unless Leipzig can beat Madrid, then effectively they're out. So actually, Leipzig are under a lot of pressure next week. So even though they're, I think, a better team than us, I still think we've still got. I would say it's kind of 50-50 at the moment in terms of Celtic's chances, to be honest with you.
Dave, very quickly, is it Champions League or Europa League for Celtic?
Obviously going to be a bonus, but I think it's going to be Europa League, and then obviously Celtic need to start winning games in order to go and do that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it just remains for me to thank my very esteemed guest tonight, Regan Stevenson, Alan Morris from Celtic by Numbers. Thank you again, Alan, and David Smith. We are back tomorrow to cover Heart of Midlothian. Come on, the Jambos! In the Conference League against Fiorentina. We are here at 10 o'clock. So thank you very much for joining us. We are back tomorrow, and we shall see you again soon. Bye-bye.
It's Champions League time once again, and you can catch up